Jai Hind, dear students. I am Dr. Preeti Mittal, and today we are going to continue with the chapter Cell, the fundamental unit of life. In the previous video, we have discussed about the cell membrane, that is also known as the plasma membrane. So today we are going to continue with the chapter and learn about cell wall. So, cell wall is an additional covering that is present only in a plant cell. The cell wall is absent in an animal cell. So, if we examine the cell of ours or of any of the birds or any of the animals, that won't be there. But fungi, bacteria, and plants have an additional covering over the cell that is known as the cell wall. So we have seen that there was a plasma membrane, and inside the plasma membrane, whatever the contents are there, the fluid part of that was known as cytoplasm. Inside the cell, there was a cell nucleus, and we have seen that this layer was known as the cell membrane. In case of plants, there is an additional covering around the cell membrane, and that is known as a cell wall. Okay. Now, this cell wall is not a continuous structure as I have drawn here. Okay. It's a double layer structure, and that is a impermeable, that is made up of cellulose, and it won't allow anything to pass through it. So how the things will come into the cell and move out of the cell? That will be moving through the pores that are present between the cell wall. So cell wall is not continuous layer, it is having pores in between, and from these pores only anything can come across the cell. So we have seen in the plasma membrane that plasma membrane was a semi-permeable membrane. It will allow some things to pass through it and it will not allow certain other things to pass through it. But this cell wall is completely impermeable. So all the things can pass only from the gaps that are present between the cell wall. So I'm just completing my cell wall. The cell wall is a incontinuous structure, means it is interrupted, it is having gaps in between, that are the pores are present in the cell wall, and through these pores only anything can come across into the plant cell. So this layer is cell wall. This cell wall is made up of cellulose. So cellulose is present only in plants, you heard, na? So in case of plants, this cell wall is made up of cellulose. In bacteria and in fungi, the cell wall is made up of some different thing. But in case of plant cell, the cell wall is made up of cellulose. Okay. Now it provides strength to a plant cell. In the previous video, we have seen about osmosis, and we have seen about endosmosis and exosmosis. So let's learn once again about those processes and see how the cell wall is going to help a plant. So in case there is exosmosis means water moves out of the cell. Then what is going to happen in a plant cell? So if the contents of the cell are moving out, if the cell is put in a hypertonic solution, then the water from the cell will move out. In case of plant cell, what is going to happen is that all the contents of the cell will be shrink and they will get collected at one place, that will be separated from the cell wall, and all the contents of the cell will get shrink and they will come to one part of the cell. Okay, and this condition, that is that aggregation of all the cell contents to one place, this is known as plasmolysis. That's known as plasmolysis. Means all the protoplasm of the cell that will be getting collected at one place, and that is known as a plasmolysis. Okay, this plasmolysis will occur only in case of We are putting the cell in a hypertonic solution, and due to hypertonic solution, the water moves out of the cell. All the cell components just get collected at one corner, and that is known as plasmolysis. Okay. You can somewhat compare it with a washing machine. So once the clothes are spin in a washing machine, then all the water is removed from the from the clothes, and then you see that all the clothes are just getting settled at one corner of the washing machine. They're not all spread in the washing machine, they're just getting collected at one corner. And similarly in case of plant cell also. Okay. Next, what would happen when endosmosis is there? I told you in the previous video also that in case there is endosmosis, means a cell, plant cell is kept in a hypotonic solution. When the plant cell is kept in a hypotonic solution, then water from outside will enter inside the cell, and the cell is going to swell up. If it is an animal cell and too much of water enters into the cell, then the cell can burst. So the cell cannot withstand it, a very like a hypotonic solution. If it's an animal cell, it won't be able to withstand that hypotonic solution. Won't be able to withstand means usko झेल नहीं पाएगा. So it is going to burst. It will not be able to survive with that hypotonic solution. But in case of a plant cell, there will be no effect on the cell. Even if a lot of the cell is kept in a hypertonic solution and water enters into the cell, this cell wall is going to protect the cell from being burst. So the cell is not going to burst. The cell can withstand that hypotonic solution. Even after the entry of water, the cell wall is there around it, and so it will protect the cell from being burst. Okay, so that is about the cell wall. It's an additional covering that is present in case of plants, fungi, and some bacteria have this cell wall. Okay, now coming to another component of the cell, that is nucleus. Okay, so nucleus is the main regulatory structure that is present in a cell. And I hope you remember who discovered the nucleus. Think about it. We just learned that in the first video. That was Robert Brown. So Robert Brown was a scientist who discovered the nucleus. He first observed the nucleus. So let's see what is the nucleus and what is its function and what's the structure of nucleus. So in the cell, there is a nucleus present, and in case of plant cell, this nucleus is at one corner, and in case of animal cell, this nucleus is at the center of the cell. Okay, we'll learn about it in the next video, that why in plant cell it's at one corner, but right now just learn about the structure of the nucleus. So nucleus is a double membrane structure. It is having double membrane, and this membrane is having some pores. So like we have drawn the pores in the cell wall, similarly the nuclear membrane is also having the pores. This is a nuclear membrane. You can see that the nuclear membrane is having some pores, some gaps are there between the nuclear membrane, and through these gaps only, these gaps are known as nuclear pores. Nuclear pores, and through these gaps only, whatever things have to be getting transferred from the cytoplasm into the nucleus, or from the nucleus to the cytoplasm. So whatever movement of substances is there, that is going to happen through these nuclear pores only. So exchange of material between the cytoplasm and the nucleus will be taking place through these nuclear pores. Okay. Apart from that, inside the nucleus, there are rod-like structures, and that are known as chromosomes. So some rod-like structures are visible inside the nucleus. and these rod-like structures are known as nucleolus, that are known as chromosomes. And apart from chromosomes, there is a nucleolus in the nucleus. Okay, so nucleolus is the aggregation of proteins that is present in the nucleus. Apart from that, chromosomes are there. Now, what is chromosomes? These chromosomes contains the genetic information, means the color of your eyes, your blood group, the texture of your hair, and many things that are decided by the genes. That all information is stored in these chromosomes. So these chromosomes are present in the nucleus of a cell. Now these chromosomes are made up of DNA and proteins. DNA and proteins make up this chromosomes. And what is DNA? You know, DNA means deoxyribose nucleic acid. This DNA only contains the genetic information. Means DNA is like in 11th standard you will read about the structure of DNA. So I'll just telling you very basic about it. That it has a double helical structure. Double helical structure is somewhat like that spiral stairs that you have seen. Okay, sometimes the stairs are spiral, no, circular like that. So such a structure is there of DNA, and on the DNA there are various segments that are known as genes. Okay, there are various segments that are known as genes. So various segments are there, small segments are there, and that are known as genes. And each gene contains a specific information. For example, one of the genes will be deciding the color of your eyes. Another gene could be deciding your blood group. So these genes are present on the DNA, and the DNA is there. DNA along with the proteins forms the chromosomes. Okay, it's a very common thing for the students to get confused about what are genes, what is DNA, what are chromosomes. Okay, so it's all like similar only, because genes are present in the DNA, and DNA along with proteins forms the chromosomes. These chromosomes, as I told you, are rod-like structures. They are visible as rod-like structures. But these will be appearing as rod-like structures only when the cell is just about to divide. When the cell is about to divide, these chromosomes will be visible as rod-like structures. But if the cell is right now not going to divide, if the cell is newly formed, it's just growing, then these chromosomes are not visible inside the nucleus. What is visible inside the nucleus is thread-like structures. These are known as chromatin threads. So some thread-like structures are visible inside the cell, and that are known as chromatin threads. These chromatin threads only come close to each other, aggregate, and forms the chromosomes when the cell is just about to divide. Okay, so it's very important that these chromosomes will be visible only when the cell is just about to divide. So if you are able to see a cell, and if you are observing a cell, and if you are able to see the chromosomes, that shows that the cell is going to divide. Now, what is the importance of nucleus in a cell? Nucleus is a very important structure. Nucleus plays a major role in regulating all the functioning of a cell. So it's the regulating body, like the principal in our school, that is the regulating body for the cell. So everything will be regulated by the nucleus. Apart from that, cellular reproduction. Cellular reproduction means one cell will be divided into two cells. So the division of the cells will also be controlled by the nucleus. First, the nucleus divides whenever cell has to divide. First, the nucleus divides, and then the cytoplasm also divides, and one cell gets converted into two cells. Okay, so for cellular reproduction, apart from that, for regulating all the functioning of the cell, this nucleus is very important. But do you know there are certain organisms which do not have a membrane around their nucleus? The nuclear material, the nucleic acid, like deoxyribose nucleic acid, is there inside that inside the nucleus, I told you. So in some of the organisms, this nucleic acid is just present without any covering around it, and that is known as a nucleoid. Okay, so such organisms which do not have a nuclear membrane are known as prokaryotic organisms. Some bacteria are there which are prokaryotic organisms. Prokaryotic means, pro means primitive and karyot means cell. So primitive cell is there. Primitive very basic cellular structure is there. So in some of the organisms, in some of the bacteria, it is seen that is this is a cell. Then inside the cell, the nucleic acid is present just like that. It's not surrounded by a nuclear membrane. Such organisms which do not have a nuclear membrane around their nucleus are known as prokaryotic organisms. So what do we call the organisms which have a nuclear membrane? Such organisms like human beings are known as eukaryotic organisms, means we have a nuclear membrane around the nucleus. Okay, so instead of nucleus, the nucleic acid is present, and such is known as nucleoid. Such a structure, that is aggregation of nucleic acid inside the cell, that is not called a nucleus. Instead of nucleus, we call it as nucleoid. Okay, now next very important question, very important question for your exams is difference between prokaryotic and eukaryotic organisms. So let's work it out. Prokaryotic and eukaryotic. So the first point is about the size. The prokaryotic cell is having a very small size, usually from 1 to 10 micrometer. The size of a prokaryotic cell is usually small, and it's approximately somewhere between 1 micrometer to 10 micrometer. What is micrometer? 1 micrometer 1 micrometer means 10 to the power minus 6 meters. Wherever micro word is there, that refers to 10 to the power 6. Okay. And in case of eukaryotic organism, the size of the cell is approximately 5 micrometer to 100 micrometer. Okay, that is the size of the cell. Now, the basic difference between prokaryotic and eukaryotic is nuclear membrane is absent. So when you are writing the differences, just write the points and then write the differences. So the first point will be size. The second will be nuclear membrane. And in this nuclear membrane, in prokaryotic, you will write that nuclear membrane is absent. And in case of eukaryotic organisms, the nuclear membrane is present. Apart from that, the the nuclear material in case of prokaryotic organisms is ill defined, and that is called as nucleoid. The nucleic acid that is present, it's ill defined, that is not having a perfect boundary around it, and that is called as nucleoid. But in case of eukaryotic organism, the nuclear material is well defined and it is present in the confined area only. It is there inside the nuclear membrane. So nuclear membrane is present and the nuclear material is present inside this nuclear membrane only. Okay. Now, if we talk about the number of chromosomes in prokaryotic organism is just 1. So the third point will be number of chromosomes. And in case of prokaryotic organism, how many chromosomes are there? 1 chromosome is there. And in case of eukaryotic organism, many chromosomes are there. For example, in human beings, there are 46 chromosomes. Okay, 23 pairs of chromosomes are there in human beings. So it depends from species to species, but the number of chromosomes in prokaryotic is just one, and the number of chromosomes in eukaryotic organism is more than one. Okay, apart from that, the prokaryotic organisms do not have membrane bound cell organelles. So, if we just observe the cell organelles inside the cell, we will see that inside the cytoplasm there are various cell organelles like mitochondria is there. In case of plant cell, chloroplast is there. So, all these are having a membrane around them. But in case of prokaryotic organism, membrane bound cell organelles are not there. The organelles are not having any membrane around them. Okay, nucleus is also not having any nuclear membrane. The cell organelles are also not having any nuclear and are not having any membrane around them. So, organelles, the next point will be organelles. Organelles in case of prokaryotic organism do not have any membrane around them, and in case of eukaryotic organisms, they have membrane bound cell organelles. Okay, so that is the difference between prokaryotic and eukaryotic organisms. That's a very frequently asked question in your exams for 2 marks. Okay, now comes about the importance of membrane around any of the structures. Membranes are very important. For example, plasma membrane or cell membrane that we have discussed. One of the organisms like viruses do not have a membrane around them, and so they are not strictly defined as living organisms even. They are like just at the junction between living and non-living organisms. Why I am saying so? Because outside a host body means when the virus is not inside any of the organisms, it's not there inside any animal, it's not there inside any plant, then it just behave like a dead cell and it's not able to carry out its functioning. But when it enters any of the organism, it uses the genetic machinery of that organism, and then it starts its reproduction, then it starts its growth, multiplication, everything is there. So viruses use the machinery, cellular machinery of the organism in which they are entering, and they do not have a cell membrane around them, and they are not strictly known as living cells even, because of the absence of the capability to divide on their own. They can't divide outside the body of a host. Okay, isn't that interesting to know about viruses? Okay, so that was all about nucleus. Then we come to cell cytoplasm. Whatever components are there inside the plasma membrane, but outside the nucleus, that is all the fluid part is there, and that fluid part is known as cell cytoplasm. In this cytoplasm only, different cell organelles are there. What are organelles? Organelles are small structures about which we are going to study in detail in the next video, that many cell organelles are there inside the cells. So all these organelles are present inside the cell cytoplasm only. Okay, so that cytoplasm is present, and inside the cytoplasm we have different cell organelles about which we are going to study in detail one by one, considering all the organelles present in the cell in the next video. So for this video, I hope the things are clear to you all, and just study regularly so that you are able to understand all the concepts from this chapter. Okay, that's all for today. Good day, everyone.